Michael Jordan just completely stopped an interviewer mid-sentence to absolutely end Rich Paul after he made the most disrespectful comment about him.
Tell him to stay in his lane. Agents don't get rings.
But it gets way worse.
But it gets so much worse. Dwayne Wade, one of LeBron's closest teammates ever, just dropped a massive statement. And honestly, it could completely ruin LeBron's legacy. Now you might wonder, why would MJ react to this? Well, it all started when Rich Paul sat down for an interview on his podcast. He thought nobody would see what he was really trying to do. When he started his Game Over podcast with Max Kellerman, everyone expected some biased opinions. But nobody thought he would try to completely erase Michael Jordan's career on a random Tuesday. Listen to this. He looked straight at the camera and literally said, "If you take Scottie Pippen off that team, Jordan goes 0 for 6 in the finals.
If you unplug Scottie,
Please go ahead and send the next part of your script.
Jordan's 0
Whenever you're set, just paste the next part of your script right here."
Oh, who knows? He did not say Jordan would have fewer rings or that the finals would just be a little tougher. He said,
Here is the rewritten version for this part, kept short, punchy, and ready for a natural AI voice. Think about that. He didn't just say Jordan would have fewer rings. He didn't even say the finals would just be a bit tougher. He said 0. Total wipeout. Basically, he's saying Michael Jordan would be just like Tracy McGrady with a shoe deal if Scottie Pippen didn't show up to save his career. Oh, but he didn't stop there. He went even further and said Pippen was actually the most impactful player on that entire team.
on the team.
Yeah, but he was the most impactful player on the team.
I get it.
Here is the rewritten version, crafted for a sharp, natural, and engaging flow. The nerve it takes to say that out loud is just hilarious. Especially when you realize Rich Paul manages a guy who has spent his entire career trying to take Jordan's throne. But it gets so much worse. This wasn't just some accidental, heated moment. This was a calculated move on his own platform. He used his new media microphone to completely control the story. Right after trying to tear down Jordan's record, Paul immediately switched gears. He pushed his classic greatest of all time argument, boldly declaring that LeBron James is the best player ever.
Ever.
Are just the same as Michael Jordan's one.
Here is the rewritten version for your AI voiceover, keeping it highly engaging, conversational, and packed with punchy lines. He even dropped this incredibly slick line, claiming that only in basketball do you freeze history. You can literally see the casual manipulation working in real time here. That specific phrase was engineered to make Jordan's 6 championships look like dusty, ancient relics. At the same time, it forces everyone to accept LeBron's longevity as the only stat that matters anymore. He is trying to rewrite the rules of basketball greatness on the fly, just to favor his own client. But here is the shocking part. For a guy who makes his living navigating front office politics, Paul actually tried to weaponize Jordan's loyalty. He argued that Jordan was only successful because of the pieces around him, and because he never had to leave Chicago. Yeah, I get it. He is genuinely trying to frame the fact that Jordan stayed with his team, faced the music, and fought through a toxic front office as some sort of weakness. It's wild. Staying with your team used to be the ultimate badge of honor. But now, the Klutch Sports machine wants you to believe it's just a lack of administrative troubles. Rich Paul wants everyone to believe that Scottie Pippen was the real engine behind the greatest dynasty of the 90s. But he completely forgot that history actually recorded what happened before Scottie even put on a Bulls jersey. And you won't believe this. When you actually look at the years Michael Jordan spent entirely by himself, the numbers he put up are so insane that they make Rich Paul's whole argument fall apart immediately. Rich Paul really wants us to believe that Scottie Pippen was holding Michael Jordan's hand from the moment he entered the league. Which is hilarious because Scottie was still playing at tiny Central Arkansas while Jordan was already completely terrorizing every single grown man in the NBA. Maximum respect to Pippen, the man is a legend. But Jordan played 3 full seasons before Pippen even touched a basketball in Chicago. And what he did during that stretch completely breaks everything LeBron and his agent are trying to build. During the infamous 1986-87 season, Jordan went on an absolute tear and averaged 37 points per game. He became the first human being to score 3,000 points in a single season since Wilt Chamberlain, back when the league played at a completely different speed.
You have to realize how disgusting the lack of help was back then, because his best...
Here is the rewritten version for your AI voiceover, kept conversational, engaging, and built with punchy sentences. You have to realize how terrible his supporting cast actually was back then. His best teammates were literally Charles Oakley and John Paxson. Teams would routinely put 3 or 4 defenders in the paint because they knew nobody else on the court was a threat. And Jordan still scored 40 or more points 37 different times that year. That included a stretch where he casually dropped 40+ in 9 straight games. And guess what? The very next season, before management could even put together a decent roster, Jordan pulled off something that has never been done again in basketball history. In the exact same season, he won the scoring title, the regular season MVP, and the Defensive Player of the Year award. Think about that. He was legitimately the best offensive player and the most terrifying defensive player on earth at the exact same time, all while carrying the entire team on his back. Rich Paul wants to pretend Jordan was born into a perfect situation. He completely skips over the fact that Jordan spent years getting physically beat up by the Detroit Pistons. Coach Chuck Daly literally invented the Jordan rules. It was basically a playbook designed to hurt Jordan and throw him to the floor every single time he drove to the basket. Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, and Rick Mahorn were violently tackling him midair. Jordan even admitted later that they beat the absolute trash out of him, and that pure hatred still lasts to this day. But here is the crazy part. Jordan didn't run to the media. He didn't demand a trade. And he didn't call up his superstar friends to go form a super team in a warmer climate. Instead, he stayed right there in the gym. He packed on 15 pounds of muscle to absorb the hits, and came back every October until he finally swept those bad boys into retirement. So, this story that Jordan was just a product of a great team is a complete fairy tale. It's just designed to protect LeBron James from his own history of switching teams whenever things got tough. And here is where this whole debate gets intense. The moment you flip this exact same logic back onto Rich Paul's own camp, his whole defense for LeBron completely blows up. You seriously cannot make this up. Because if we are playing by this new rulebook where a superstar gets 0 credit for a ring because they had an elite co-star, then we need to talk about LeBron. He literally had to run away from his hometown just to ride the coattails of a guy who already knew how to win a championship. Before the decision happened in 2010, LeBron put on one of the most confusing performances ever in Game 5 against the Boston Celtics. Cleveland was the #1 seed, playing on their home floor. Yet LeBron only scored 15 points, shooting a terrible 3 for 14 as his team got blown out by 32 points. Everyone watching could see he had completely checked out mentally. Why? 'Cause he was already planning his big television special to escape to Miami. He didn't stay to build a culture. He literally held a 1-hour TV show just to announce he was packing his bags to join Dwayne Wade. Now compare that to Scottie Pippen, who came to Chicago as a raw rookie through the draft. Wade wasn't some young piece management brought in to help LeBron. Wade was a certified franchise superstar who had already won a championship and a Finals MVP back in 2006, long before LeBron even knew what the finals felt like. Here is the rewritten version for your AI voiceover, kept conversational, punchy, and structured for a natural human flow. LeBron didn't build a powerhouse. He joined an existing one. In fact, he even admitted on camera years later that without Wade, he wouldn't have the resume he has today. Rich Paul loves to talk about Jordan having help. But Jordan never had to watch his co-star win a Finals MVP before him. And Jordan certainly never needed his co-star to teach him how to stop collapsing under the bright lights, which is exactly what Wade had to do for LeBron after that historic meltdown against Dallas in 2011. But the story gets so much worse for the Klutch Sports narrative when you look at Cleveland's 2016 championship run. Stephen A. Smith said it perfectly on national TV. LeBron James could not have won that championship without Kyrie Irving. That is a cold, hard fact that Rich Paul conveniently buries every single time he opens his mouth. Everyone loves to give LeBron all the credit, but Game 7 of the 2016 Finals was completely stuck in the mud until Kyrie Irving stepped up. He hit that cold-blooded pull-up three right over Steph Curry with just 53 seconds left. That specific shot is the entire reason Cleveland has a banner hanging from the rafters. Without it, LeBron's legendary comeback story ends in a devastating loss. But that's just the surface. The reality in Cleveland went so much deeper than the media ever wants to admit. Multiple insider reports confirmed that Kyrie Irving never even wanted LeBron to return to the Cavaliers in the first place. He wanted to run his own team. It's well documented that Kyrie and his camp were looking at trade options immediately after winning that 2016 title because the environment was so toxic. Think about that. Kyrie stuck around, put his massive ego aside, and hit the biggest shot in franchise history for a guy he didn't even want to play with. Look at the difference here. Scottie Pippen arrived through a draft day trade and never tried to sabotage the Bulls dynasty. Meanwhile, LeBron's most celebrated championship required a co-star who was ready to quit the team the exact day after they won the ring. This is exactly why it looks like a planned attack on MJ. The deeper you look into how Klutch operates, the more you see a hidden pattern. They are absolutely terrified of Michael Jordan staying at the top of the mountain. The entire Klutch Sports ecosystem is basically a massive PR company disguised as a sports agency. Every single take Rich Paul drops on a microphone is calculated to throw dirt on Jordan's name, while giving himself just enough room to play innocent when fans call him out. When Jordan's legendary former agent, David Falk, stated that LeBron completely cherry-picked his super teams, Rich Paul didn't even try to debate the facts. He just brushed it off, called the comment beneath him, and deflected. Why? 'Cause he knew there was no logical way to defend LeBron jumping from team to team. And you won't believe what happened when his own co-host, Max Kellerman, calmly laid out the facts and called Jordan the undisputed greatest of all time. Paul went into complete panic mode. He started performing what Kellerman literally called mental gymnastics right there on the air, moving the goalposts and inventing new definitions of greatness just to avoid the obvious truth. It all makes perfect sense when you look at the business side. Rich Paul published his memoir, Lucky Me, and the man who wrote the foreword was none other than LeBron James himself. His entire brand, his agency, his book sales, and his podcast views are tied directly to LeBron James. The entire machine literally depends on dragging Jordan down in the eyes of the public. Propaganda has become so painfully obvious that even Kendrick Perkins, historically the biggest LeBron defender on TV, had to publicly tell Rich Paul to stop doing this.
And this is where people start saying the controlling of the narrative. Like, bro, you speaking on MJ and you saying these things.
Here is the rewritten version for your AI voiceover, keeping it highly engaging, natural, and punchy. Now, the actual legends who shared the court with Michael Jordan decided they had heard enough of the disrespect. And they came out hard. They completely cleared the bench and walked Rich Paul right off his own court. The backlash was so heavy and instant. It felt like the entire old-school NBA collectively decided they were completely done letting a sports agent rewrite their actual lives just for podcast clicks. Stephen A. Smith immediately marched onto the first take set. He loudly declared that LeBron James will simply never be the greatest of all time, no matter how many longevity stats his agency tries to manufacture. But the real heat came from the guys who actually shared a locker room with Jordan. Take Stacey King, who won 3 straight championships alongside MJ in Chicago. King went straight onto his podcast and pointed out the hilarious reality. LeBron has to play an extra 8 full seasons just to even approach what Jordan accomplished in just 13 years with the Bulls.
Well, let's stop the GOAT debate, okay? You're doing what you're doing in 20 years, MJ did in 13. Okay, so let's just stop right there. You're not the GOAT, and you're not going to bypass Kobe, and you're not going to bypass Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain.
But the final, most devastating blow didn't come from an old Bulls player or a media talking head. came from Dwayne Wade. Think about that. This is literally LeBron's best friend, his former Miami co-star, and the guy who handed him his very first championship ring. Wade looked straight into the camera and stated that until the day he passes away, Michael Jordan will always be his personal GOAT.
I come from a Jordan era. I am biased, and I'm going to be a bias to the day I pass away. Michael Jordan will be my GOAT.
Here is the rewritten version for your AI voiceover, keeping it highly engaging, conversational, and built with sharp, punchy lines. Rich Paul is playing a desperate game because he knows his client is running out of time on the court. And that forces us to ask the one question the media is absolutely terrified to bring up. Why exactly is Rich Paul orchestrating this failed takedown? This whole media circus is literally just a corporate boardroom meeting disguised as a basketball debate. Rich Paul is fully aware that the GOAT conversation isn't just decided by trophies. It is a straight-up multi-billion-dollar brand war. Klutch Sports Camp is sweating bullets over one simple fact. Michael Jordan is sitting on a mountain of wealth that their entire empire combined cannot even touch. Jordan's net worth has climbed to $4.3 billion, making him the absolute wealthiest retired athlete on the planet by a mile. Meanwhile, LeBron James sits at $1.4 billion. LeBron is literally worth less than one-third of the guy his agent is desperately trying to tear down on podcasts. Jordan only made a total of $90 million in actual NBA salary across his entire 15 seasons. But today, he casually pulls in roughly $300 million a year from Nike alone, all because he gets a 5% royalty on every single Jordan brand sale. In fact, the Jordan brand generated $7 billion in revenue for fiscal year 2024, making it Nike's absolute strongest division. Completely breaks the brains of these modern corporate executives. But what if I told you Rich Paul actually tried to claim that the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s was what helped build Jordan's brand?
Because these people had basically not even careers or high-paying jobs. They just had hustles. So now when you bring forth the crack epidemic, it created a revenue stream amongst a group of consumers that, number one, would have never had that.